Welcome to our class one of managerial economics. So managerial economics by definition is the integration of economic theory and decision sciences to solving managerial problems optimally. So when we're dealing with managerial economics, we have two key components. There's economic theory, which has both the micro and the macro economics. The micro will look at the theory of demand, the production theory, the market structures, the profit, the theory of capital investment. It also looks at the economic environment as well as the political environment. So these will give us the delimitations of what we're going to look at. In fact, they will give us the outline of what economics is all about. So by definition, there are basic processes that are involved in the decision-making process, regardless of what type of decisions. All processes must be divided into the following five. Number one, you define the problem. Number two, you determine the objective. What are we to achieve? Number three, you identify the possible solutions. You select the best possible solution and implement the decision. So these are the five subdivisions of the decision-making process. So the component of economics, which we talked about, firstly, we need to understand demand and supply mechanisms. So what is demand? What is supply? And what is a market? So a market is simply a system where buyers and sellers of a commodity will interact. They will settle at an agreeable price and quantity for which goods or services will be bought or sold. So it includes players like the sellers and the buyers who constitute individuals, firms, factories, can be dealers and agents. So when you're dealing with a market, it is either a physical or a virtual place where exchange happens. So a market, it needn't be a physical place. It is simply a point of exchange. So we look at market demand. The theory of demand explains the relationship that exists between demand and the other factors that affect demand. So in economics, when we are talking about demand, we're looking at the desire that is backed by two important things. Number one, ability. Number two, the willingness. So without these two, we cannot really ascertain that there is demand. All right? So demand has the ability and the willingness um, of an individual purchasing a particular product or service. So we are going to look at the law of demand, which simply states that for holding all things constant, an increase in price will be acclimatized, will be accompanied by a decrease in quantity demanded. So that is what the law of demand states. So we can use the law of demand in four ways: using a table, using words, using a graph, and using an equation. So these are the four ways that we're going to define demand. So graphically, demand should be downsloping. So a demand equation will look like this. So demand is downsloping. So demand is given by A minus BQ, where A is the y-intercept and B is the slope. The A is where it cuts this p-axis. The P is always on this axis, and this is our Q. All right. So for every increase in 1 unit from P1 to P2, there will be an accompanied decrease in quantity demanded from Q2 to Q1. So the law of demand has an inverse relationship because of the law of demand, which says the higher the price, the lower the quantity demanded, and vice versa. So this is one way we can use a graph to explain the relationship between two goods. So you should attest to say whenever some commodity increases in price, you're going to demand less of it. Using the equation, there is what we call the direct demand and the inverse demand. The direct demand is given by A minus BP. So this is the direct demand equation. And P is equal to A minus BQ. This is the inverse demand equation. So these are the equations that show that this is our demand equation. So we can also use the equation. We can also use the table to illustrate what we call the demand schedule. So the quantities are increasing quantity 1, 2, 3, 4. The price will be inverse. So here we have 10, 8, 7, 6, 4. So this may be 2, this may be 4, 5, and this may be 2. So they'll ask you to illustrate this. So you can illustrate this is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So you can sketch this graphically. So 10 against 1, you put your sketch there. 8 against 2, you put your sketch there. 3 against 6, you put your sketch here. 4 against 4, you put your sketch there. 5 against 2, you put your sketch there. So you can see this is a downsloping trend. So the question is, why is the demand equation always downsloping? Because of the inverse relationship that exists between our price and the quantity demanding. So there are several factors that affect a demand for a particular good or service. What are some of the factors that affect a particular demand or service? So there are several factors that include number one, the price of that particular good, the price of a complementary good, the price of a substitute good, the price of the income, the tastes or preferences, the technology, expectations, advertising, weather, um, population, natural population. So all these factors affect what? The demand for a good. So for these factors, only price propagates a movement along the demand curve. So this movement is called along. So this is the only factor that perpetuates a movement along. All these other factors will cause a shift either to the left or to the right. So a shift can arise when demand has increased from D1 to D2, or can shrink from D1 to D3. So D0 is the original. So D0 to D2, it has increased. This is a shift to the right. D0 to D1 is a shift to the left. So a shift can occur when there are changes in demand, in taste, in income, in preferences. So it causes a shift to occur. So the shift comes about because of the explanation that I've given you. Okay. So demand has an expression that we must understand. So there are different types of goods that we must understand, what are called inferior goods and normal goods, substitute goods and complementary goods, depending on how and what is happening. So are we together so far? Holding all things constant?
Yes.
the consumer would, as much as possible, want to have a reduced price, and the supplier would want to have an increased price. So these two must meet halfway, and this is called the equilibrium. Equilibrium is simply a point where demand is equal to supply.
Hi, Collins.
So
Can you
uh,
hear me?
we can understand that holding all things constant, the consumer would want a high price, and the producer would want consumer would want a low price, and the producer would want a high price, but they will need to meet halfway. So this is a point we call equilibrium. So equilibrium is simply the point at which demand equals supply. So we have two curves here. There's diagram A and diagram B. Both of them are triangles. Diagram A is what we call the consumer surplus, and is given by the formula half base times height. So the consumer surplus is simply the price above which the consumer is still willing to pay. Okay, that's the consumer surplus. And graph B is simply the producer surplus, which is the price below which a supplier is willing to pay. So this is what we call the producer surplus. So given a chance, when we add both the consumer surplus and the producer surplus, the collective amount we get is called the total surplus. So total surplus is simply when we add the consumer surplus and the producer surplus. It's also called the social welfare. All right. So I repeat, what is the consumer surplus? What is the producer surplus? And what is the deadweight loss? So in economics, when you're dealing with these principles, they're very important. The consumer surplus is the difference between what the consumer is willing to pay for a good or service and what they actually pay. It actually measures the extra benefit or the surplus that consumers will receive because they actually pay less than their maximum willingness to pay. It's given by the area half BH. The producer surplus is the difference between the price that the producers will receive for a good and the minimum price that they are willing to accept for to produce it. So it actually reflects the benefits that the producers will get from selling at market price higher than their minimum acceptable price. So the consumer and producer surplus have the same formula. The total surplus is the sum of the consumer surplus and the producer surplus. So it is the total net benefit to society from the production and the consumption of the good. Then we also have what is called the deadweight loss, which is simply the total loss of the total surplus that will occur when the market is not operating at equilibrium because of taxes and other government interventions. So we should now learn how to sketch these diagrams. We should now learn how to sketch these diagrams. So how do we sketch the demand function? How do we sketch the um, supply function in that regard? Okay, so sketching of these functions is very easy. We sketch as follows. So for given a demand function, we know it has a negative slope, which is 100 minus 2q. And if you're sketching the supply function, which is 10 plus 3q. So the easiest um, way to sketching any linear function is putting the letters on one side. So for the demand, put the letters on the 2 goes this side, the 2 will be positive. Then it's equal to 100. there's an invisible 1 here. So 1 into 100, it is 100. And 2 into 100, it is 50. So to sketch this, we need to cut the p-axis at 100 and the q-axis at 50. We do the same here, put the letters on one side. When we put the letters on one side, the p will still remain here, minus 3q is equal to 10. What intercept do we have? We have an invisible 1 there. So 1 into 10 is 10. Negative 3 into 10 is negative 3.33 on the q. So when you want to sketch this, 10 is here, on the p, put your dot, and negative 3.33 is here. So when you sketch this line, it will come here. So collectively, we're going to have the demand function here, the supply function starting from 10 there. We don't need the negative part. So the supply is starting at what? 10. The demand is downing at 100. And this is what? 50. And here we have the 0. So we said at equilibrium, what happens? Demand is equal to supply. Any questions this far? Are there any questions so far? Please ask before I proceed. Any questions so far? Okay, so at equilibrium, demand is equal to supply. So the demand function here is the one that we put here, 100 minus 2q, the supply, 10 plus 3q. So we just want to solve for q, and then we solve for p. So the numbers are here. So when this one goes this side, it'll be 3q plus 2q. Okay, so here we're going to have 90, and here we're going to have 5q. So when you divide both sides by 5, we're going to have our q to be 18. So when our q is 18, we substitute this into any of these to find what our p is. So p could be 10 plus 3q. So where there is a q, you put what? 18. So what are we going to have? 64. Even if you had to use the other equation, you still get 64. That is what it means by equilibrium. So at equilibrium, we're going to have this equilibrium price, 64. Equilibrium quantity is 18. And you have the two graphs. Consumer surplus is here, and the producer surplus is here. Are we together so far? So when you're going to extract this, the area or the length from here to here, 100 minus 64 is 36. The length from here to here, 0, from 18 is 18. So the consumer surplus, therefore, will be half times 18 times 36. The base is 18, the height is 36. Are you following? When I put a dot there, it means I'm simply what? Multiplying. So don't get confused. So that is how we find 324. The producer surplus also is sharing the same base, 18. But the distance from 10 to 64 is you subtract the two numbers, 54. So the producer surplus, therefore, will simply be half BH. So our base is what? 18. And our height is what? 54. 18 times 54, what do we get? 18 times 54 times half. We get 486. So when we add these two, 486 plus 324, what we get is a total surplus, which is our addition of the consumer surplus and our producer surplus, which ultimately gives you 810. So this is how we find the consumer and the producer surplus and the total surplus. Are we together? So there are government interventions that usually um, come in place. There's what we call price ceiling and floor price. So that is a natural setting when we want to have an equilibrium. So government interventions in the market usually occur when the state would want to influence the functioning of these markets to correct some of the inefficiencies, to promote some equity, to achieve some economic objectives. So these interventions are necessary because free markets usually fail to allocate resources efficiently on their own. So they are what we call price controls, and they're what we call um, price controls and taxes. So under price controls, we have what we call price ceiling. So price ceiling is simply the maximum price that is set below the equilibrium to make essential goods affordable. For instance, rentals, subsidized food. So the effect basically is to it can cause shortages if demand exceeds supply. Then we also have a floor price, which is the minimum price that is set above the equilibrium, like minimum wage, agricultural support prices. So the effect would be to lead surpluses if they were to exceed demand. So government would want to control the black market from exploitation. So here is the equilibrium. Okay. So right above the equilibrium, we can set a minimum price. So this is called our floor price. And here we can also have our price seal just above the what? The um just below the equilibrium. So this is what? Floor price. This is a price ceiling, the equilibrium. Government interventions usually be effective. Then we have what we call the deadweight loss. Deadweight loss here. So it is important that government will come in. The other ways in which government will affect is through taxes. So taxes are levied on goods like alcohol, tobacco, fuel. So when government will raise revenue through them, it will reduce consumption for certain harmful goods. So they'll create what is called a deadweight loss if it reduces the market efficiency. The purpose basically is to internalize what are called the negative externalities like pollution. The government can also affect these ones using what are called subsidies. Subsidies are simply financial support that government will give to farmers, to producers, to consumers to lower the cost of production, thereby encouraging what? A certain kind of consumption. So this can affect supply or consumption. So in that effect, we call those controls. Government can also come in terms of regulation and standards. So these ones may be through safety, quality, fair competition. So all these are under category of government interventions. So now there's an effect when there's a tax, there's an effect when there's a subsidy, and there's an effect when there's a floor price that will affect the equilibrium. So these are things that we now need to understand. All right. So we'll go to an exam type of a question before I answer any questions that you have for me. So let's look at this exam question here. The market has the following equations: supply and demand. What is equilibrium for this product? Suppose government consumer income has resulted into a new demand of so much. What is the new equilibrium? Suppose government enacts legislation to impose a price seal equivalent to the price above. So these are government interventions. So how do we come up with the equilibrium price? And how do we come up with the um, equilibrium quantity and showing the effect of those government interventions? Anyone? Equilibrium, what happens at equilibrium? What happens at equilibrium?
The price is equal to demand.
The price is equal to demand, correct. Okay, so if the price is equal to demand, so we're going to equate those two together, isn't it? So how do we know which one is the demand equation and how do we know which one is our supply equation?
The demand equation is downward sloping, whilst the supply equation is upward sloping.
Yes. So you can even tell from the signs there, the demand equation has a negative slope and the supply equation has a positive slope. So to find the equilibrium price and quantity, we simply do what? We'll follow the rules. Okay, so we'll quickly do this and I'll give you as what? As homework to do at your own time. So we're given a demand equation and we're given the supply equation. So we equate them as follows. So let me just go to the pamphlet quickly. On page 13, we have the demand equation, 300 minus 3p supply, 100 plus 3p. So when you equate these two, the equilibrium, we put the letters on one side and the numbers on one side. So our equilibrium price is 25. Then we slot this one in either of them or both of them. Equilibrium, what? And it will be 225. So you can sketch this. Right, so demand and supply. So how do we sketch the demand equation? We put the letters on one side. So it will be Q plus 3P is equal to 300. Then what numbers are there? There's a 1 there. 1 into 300 is 300. So to cut here 300. Okay. And what number is there? 3. 3 into 300, 100. We do the same for the supply equation. The QS is this side, minus 5P is equal to 100. So on the Q, what number is there? 1. 1 into 100 is 100. So the 100 there. Okay. Then negative 5. Negative 5 into 100 is what? Negative 20. So it's cutting from the negative side there. So negative 20 is here. Then we have 100 here. So any questions so far? So if that is explained now, we can illustrate our answers. So here, the equilibrium is 25, then the equilibrium quantity is 225. Okay. So this will be our consumer surplus, and this is our producer surplus. Are we following? Is this clear? So if you want to illustrate that, the demand here for the is 25, from there that is 75. Then here 0 to 225 is 225. So you can calculate the consumer surplus, although we're not asked, just for learning purposes. Then from here 25 plus minus negative 20, that is 45. So the producer surplus, we're going to have 45 here. Then on the upper part here, from 0 to 225, you calculate. Are we together? Are we following? Right. I'm not going to solve that because that will be your homework. I'm just guiding you on what to do. Then we go to the second part of the question, which is asking us to calculate the new demand if they have changed what? The new demand, the new equilibrium, if the demand has been changed to 420 minus 3p. The procedure is simply the same. You just need to allocate or equate the new demand to the old supply. The supply remains the same. Okay, so what becomes our new equilibrium? We just substitute in the equation. So what was our old supply? Our old supply was 100 plus 5p, our new demand 420. So you get these ones. So our equilibrium will be what? 40. When you sort this in the other equation, you're going to find that our price will be 300. So 40 against 300 will be the same. So when you get here, you put the 40 there, you're going to get 300. 300, you sketch. So here you're going to have our equilibrium price, equilibrium quantity, and you sketch what we want. So that will be your homework to just do the question that we have done. So this is our first makeup class. All right, so I need you to understand where your friends have reached. I hope it's been clear. Cynthia, are we together now?
Yes, yes, it's very clear.
All right.